Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 86, Showdown with Stepping Man, Part 1. What? Yelled Nick after hearing what Sem had to say. A lot of parts are based off conjecture, but I don't think it's wrong. Tiana, Bond, and Scott were quiet and looked uneasy. There was no room for doubts. By the way, how did it go with you, Nick? I'm ready. I have enough to counter Stepping Man. Nick strongly nodded. Training went well, and I came up with something interesting. Came up? Asked Sem, but rather than answer, Nick messed with something in his hand that looked like a metal square. Its surface was matted and its gloss was removed. Oh, that's the ignition magic item, isn't it? Why do you have it? Red lent it to me. Make sure you bring it back. It was quite expensive. There was a jewel embedded in the metal. When Nick pressed it, a small flame came out from the tip. Similarly to a magic lamp, it was not a cheap item but one that could generally be used by the average person. It had a lot of uses such as lighting tobacco and cooking. Do you smoke? I'll explain that too. Well then. It's time to make the final preparations. Everyone felt the ambition in Nick's words. It was time for the bounty hunters to go to work. The 3 moons could rarely be seen in the sky together, but this was one of those nights. They were Engetsu, Yugetsu, and lastly Shingetsu. Shingetsu drew the most beautiful perfect circle, and gently illuminated the night sky with its golden glow. Engetsu was big, but upon closer observation, its surface was rugged like a potato, so it was not very popular. Yugetsu was small and more difficult to see. Some people prefer the other two, but most people were fascinated by Shingetsu. As always, he was wearing a cloak with a hood, avoiding moonlight. It was a useful magic item, the Phantom King's orb embedded in the collar. Something he bought from a shady broker that dealt in magic items. He was not sure about it at first, but its effects were better than he could have hoped. Erasing his presence and making it so people could not remember his features had fantastic synergy with his abilities. It felt familiar, and ironic considering his circumstances. At that point, he was nobody. Family, status, job. He had lost it all. He was close to achieving something, but would not get much in return. His job and honor may be returned to him, but what he wanted the most would never be attained. Every night, every time he woke up, he felt the pain of losing his family. But it was only pain. Neither joy or excitement moved his body, only pain. He would stop at nothing to heal this hopeless fury. He knew that doing this would lead to people targeting him and getting in his way, but he was out of money. He could not buy more magic items to break the deadlock, and it was too late to stop. So he looked at the city, searching for healthy children. He had to. If they did not contract yellow devil disease in the same way his daughter did, and he healed it from there would be no point. He was deep in thought, when suddenly a voice called out to him, from a place where it shouldn't have. You're not curing the disease, you're creating sick people and fiddling with them, aren't you? You. There was a young man in the darkness, one he met several times before. 2 with his face showing, and 2 with his face hidden. He could see his firm body even as it was covered with clothes. His eyes were also strong. He could feel something radiating, perhaps jealousy of his youth and potential. Or maybe envy of a person that did not know the despair life could bring him. However, at that moment, there was something that required his attention more than his emotions. The young man was standing in the same place he was. They were standing somewhere so high it should have been impossible to reach, unless you were a cat or a bird. Moreover, he appeared suddenly and without making a sound. The labyrinth city had many sturdy buildings such as temples, government buildings, and factories. They were standing on scaffolding meant to aid in the demolition of a factory. There were many routes where one could move in these kinds of roofs and scaffolding, but considerable skill was necessary to leap from building to building. Was the young man using some sort of magic he didn't know about? Was he also a stepping user? Ah. In any case, the young man was an enemy. He adjusted his breathing and moved his body. One of the most fundamental parts of stepping was controlling the body clearly and according to one's own will. Not moving in accordance to outside reactions, and instead exactly as one thought. In this manner, it was possible to reach a state of mind as free as a petal gently falling, or a firm bedrock. Shah. He closed in on his opponent. Light enough to freely move in unsteady footing, and heavy enough to overwhelm his opponent. Targeting the chin, solar plexus, and leg tendon in order. That's it. But the opponent shrugged it all off, as if he knew it was coming, and countered with a spear hand strike. In a situation where one could not use one's body weight, it was more effective than a fist. But the target was very obvious, the throat. When he moved to block, the trajectory changed. The spear hand was a feint, the real goal being catching the hand that moved to defend. His left wrist was caught by the young man. I thought this was the best way to catch you. If we're holding hands, there's no problem even if you suddenly become light. That's true. I was confused at first, but if I know how light you can be and how you can move, I can more or less understand what you'll try to do. That's not all. You can use it too, can't you? Yes. But it's not enough. I can tell you've only recently learned light body. You're far from understanding even the basics of stepping. Both had one hand sealed, and one hand free, and their footing was too unsteady to kick. This situation would surely turn into a brawl, but that wrong impression leads to carelessness. Wah! The young man was surprised. After all, his opponent jumped off, even while he was grabbing his arm. In order to support his opponent's weight, he deactivated light body and put his body weight firmly on the ground. The hooded man's body was left hanging like a pendulum, but he used the centrifugal force to release himself, causing him to drop straight down. However, this was a construction site, and there were many things for him to grab a hold of. He threw a rope from his cuff while continuing to use light body, and moved several meters away from the young man. To the roof of the factory. You're a real trickster. Humph, you make me laugh if tricks are enough to surprise you. If you are going to stand in my way. Nargava. It's you, isn't it? The young man suddenly said a name. His opponent glared at him, saying nothing in response. Time passed, but sensing the young man was sure of what he said, the hooded man gave up. How did you know? First of all, you're too skilled. It doesn't matter if you're an adventurer or a ruffian, not many can do those tricks while handling a rare magic item, and using defensive and strengthening magic. You'd be top of the class even if we lumped everyone in Manhunt and the abandoned area together. That's it. You've been treating people with nowhere to go. So. If you've been treating people, how come the spread of the disease isn't dying down? Yellow devil disease isn't that infectious. When it infects, it infects. That's all that matters, right? When you look at people one by one, it's a strange disease. Sometimes it spreads through one or two brothels and prostitutes losing their livelihoods, but there has to be a reason for new cases to be popping up in the red light district and the entire abandoned area. Someone has to be spreading it. I see. Well, that's not my theory, I'm just parroting what my partner said. But I believe it. Get ready. And then, the young man, Nick, went into a fighting stance once again. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 87, Showdown with Stepping Man, Part 2. Going back a little. When Nick started the briefing session in Sea Anemone, Sem explained what he saw and heard in the abandoned area, and his theories that came from that. Nargava is Stepping Man. Red and Ada were taken aback. But he seems like such a respectable man, from what I've heard. I heard he's charitable to the poor too. But the members of Survivors had a different reaction. Karen, Nick, aren't you surprised? No. I wanted to say it's hard to believe. But it kind of makes sense. Nick explained to Sem what he heard from Leon. So he would need to have connections with a broker to buy magic items, and Nargava is a strong candidate. Even the ruffians there respect him. That's true. What makes you think that, Sem? There was the corpse of a child there that died from disease. I think it's one of the children kidnapped by Stepping Man. Everyone except Bond and Tiana were shocked. What? Bond transcribed the child's appearance. We passed by Manhunt on the way here and confirmed that it matches one of the missing girls. I see. That means... Nick noticed something strange and interrupted himself. No, wait. So she wasn't killed? She died from disease? Yes, yellow devil disease. Could it be that he wanted to cure her? Sem neither shook his head or nodded. You're half right. There were signs that she was treated. Half. There would be no need to forcibly take her away if the point was just to treat her. He probably used another patient's blood to infect her. Hey. That's... Nick and the others were speechless. He was excommunicated from a temple in the capital and wandered into this city, probably half a year ago. But he only appeared in the abandoned area 2 months ago. So he was living normally until then. I think he was probably keeping a low profile. He can hide his presence with that magic item, right? Hide his presence. So he spread the disease. Said Nick, to which Sem nodded with a sullen expression. When Yellow Devil disease started spreading, he started openly working in the abandoned area. So it fits, but why did he start going around kidnapping people? Probably because that was his main goal. Up until that point, he was treating people just to practice. His real goal is to heal people in the same conditions as his daughter. He wants to see how patients are infected and how they're healed, all to establish preventive measures and a cure. I feel like I get it but also don't. What I hear sounds a lot like revenge, but it also sounds like the actions of a proper priest. Nick was at a complete loss, and everyone else had the same look on their faces. It all makes sense in his mind. I kind of understand. So, do you have any proof? The Order of the Sun will investigate something that's serious, but you can't just show up empty-handed and say, I got him, without getting into trouble. Said Red, to which Tiana responded. It's not proof, but I heard about this too. A priest whose daughter caught Yellow Devil disease, which turned into a scandal that led to him being expelled. I don't really remember the names of the ones involved, but it matches Nargava's story perfectly. Nick understood what Tiana was saying. So basically, the man named Nargava was already gone while you were still in the capital? That sounds about right. I'm sure the proof is in his clinic. It doesn't look like he's destroying all the evidence. He left a corpse behind without burning it with sacred fire, and was sloppy enough for even us to notice. So, what now? Mumbled Karen, and Sem asked her back. What do you mean? If you say he's the one, I believe it, but how are we going to catch him? You have a point. Should we break into his clinic and catch him there? That would be a problem. It'd be easy for him to get away from that tight space, and it would put us in a disadvantage because we're fighting as a party. Said Nick with a bitter expression. I want to catch him while he's on the move. That way, we can get a hold of him while he's using that magic item, the Phantom King's orb. The main problem is that we can't do that. Unless you found a way to do it, right? Nick smiled at Tiana's sarcastic question. Yes. We can shut down both the magic item that hides his presence, and his light movements. Right, Olivia? Olivia heard her name, and started talking, seemingly itching for the conversation to turn her way. Yeah. I also only caught a glimpse and can tell Nick's light body is wonderful. But that will not be enough to counter Stepping Man. That might be so. What else can we do to even the odds? When Nick talked to Olivia, he had already learned how to use light body, and how to capture Stepping Man. What he wanted to talk to her about was where exactly to fight him. The gap between you two can be filled with locational advantage. Locational advantage? Tiana asked back. We have narrowed down the routes in which Stepping Man frequently appears. If you really want to, you can wait for him here. Olivia spread a map on the table. They added routes that Stepping Man used, so there was even more information written on it than before. He uses the scaffolding in this building more frequently. Why there? It's a factory, or rather, it was. It went bankrupt, so now it's just an abandoned building. The scaffolding around it was put in place to aid in dismantling it. Stepping Man took off his hood, and the voice and figure that was always blurry quickly started to take shape. It was the bald man that opened a charitable medical clinic in the abandoned area, Nargava. So it is true. Mumbled Nick, while Nargava glared at him. You don't understand. Yes, you discovered my identity, but there are many places to hide in this city, and it will be easy to do so as long as I have this Phantom King's orb. Is that what you think? That orb has a weakness, you know. What? It doesn't distort light and sound, it distorts people's perception. It's easy to do that with someone you've never met, but it's much harder when someone's perception has been heightened. What does that mean? Basically, if I spread rumors that you're the one using a magic item to hide your identity, the Phantom King's orb will stop working. It becomes useless once people can see through it. The moment you carelessly confirmed your identity, you lost. Nargava seemed bewildered, but soon started laughing. I don't know if that's true or if you're lying, but it seems I've been cornered pretty badly. Looks like you understand. Then it's simple. Nargava was once again in a fighting stance. Wait. We have such a beautiful view in front of us, so how about we take a break? It's probably your last day out here, so how about a drink? Said Nick while taking out a small bottle. Figures. Nick sighed as he looked at a disinterested Nargava, and then drank the contents of the bottle while lighting up the ignition magic item. Wah! What are you? Nick quickly spit out the contents of the small bottle, and a huge flame appeared before Nargava's eyes. It was not magic, just simple flames, but that's exactly why Narvaga stood still. There were always signs before magic activates, but that was not the case here. Nargava's eyes were filled with rage, as he realized he was tricked by what was no more than a street performer's trick. What? However, Nick was no longer in front of him. It's just a trick. Take this. Up there. Nargava looked up, and that was when Nick mercilessly dropped his heel. That must have been what it felt like to Narvaga, who upon realizing it was impossible to dodge, crossed his arms and blocked the attack. Guh, you idiot. Can't you see what will happen if you attack with your full weight here? Of course, that's why I did it. It will break. Just as I expected. A creaking sound could be heard, until it was replaced by a louder cracking sound. The roof they were standing on was not made to withstand the weight of two people, and a hole opened, sending the two falling into the factory. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 88, Showdown with Stepping Man, Part 3. They landed in a wide atrium. This was a laundry facility before it went out of business. The manager had an affair with one of the washerwomen, and ran away with her in the dead of night. The business was finished, but the building itself was too old and no one was willing to buy it. You can rest assured that no one's here, and no one will care no matter how much of a mess we make. It was completely deserted, just like Nick said. All that was left was the witch cauldron-like big buckets used for cleaning, left behind gathering dust. Even though two people had fallen from several meters, there was very little dust in the air. They also appeared to be unharmed. You're pretty good. This is nothing more than the basics of stepping. Are you self-taught? In that case, I will give you a personal lesson. Thanks, but Tiana, Karen, Ice Shield, Uruia. Chanting, growling, and an explosive roar echoed. A shield made of ice blocked the hole from which the two entered. Tiana was hiding in the scaffolding where lights meant to illuminate the factory were hung, and at the same time, Karen sealed the entrance by chucking steel shelves and trolleys at it. She took out her dragon bone sword, and glared at Nargava from afar. Nick's plan was to draw him here to negate Stepping Man's trademark in hopes to seal his escape. Learning light body and using the fire breath technique Karen talked about was nothing more than set up for this moment. Nargava had a self-deprecating smile on his face, as he realized he had fallen into a trap. Very well done, so you've locked me in here. Escape if you can. I could, but at this point, it would be quicker to do you in. Thanks for that, but there is one more person here. Following Nick's words, the man hiding in the darkness showed himself. Nargava. Sem. You're the one that noticed it was me, weren't you? I wonder. How about we stop playing dumb? Sem then responded with a sharpness in his eyes that could not be seen normally. Well then, answer me this. Why did you spread a plague? Your daughter died in the capital, not here, and it was a disease that killed her, not another person. Do you think you can get revenge by doing this? Revenge. I guess it's not that far off. Nargava chuckled. It was the first time anyone present had seen him laughing. There was a nauseating breathing, characteristic from when people who do not usually laugh loudly. The stench of madness that could be felt from it sent a shiver down Nick's spine. If I can establish a treatment against the disease that killed my daughter, her death will not have been for nothing. It will turn it into a meaningful death, and will bring back our honor. Is that why? That, you say? Nargava stared at Sem with his eyes wide open. Yes. Your daughter's death should be lamented, and the criticism and lack of sympathy you received were deplorable, but how many lives have you taken because of this? Surely not just one or two. I don't care about those that can't survive without reliance on others, or kids that do not even know their birth parents. Yes, compared to her. Nargava stared at Sem, but it did not seem like he was looking at the present. I was just a boring priest. Sem, I've never given any thought to saving others like you, not even once. When I was young, I was a knight that specialized in escorts, and I got sick of my life of being surrounded by ruffians and stinking of blood. One day, we just happened to save a high-ranking priest, who enticed me to study and become a priest myself. I spent a lot of time dealing with the politics of the temple and trying to rise up in the ranks as much as possible. I was such a small man. So you were a knight. No wonder you're so strong. I knew a bit of healing magic, but it's no like I became a priest because I had a strong backer. It was hard, and that's why I wanted to climb as high as I could, but then, my daughter was born. Nargava's voice had a kind tone to it when he said the word daughter. When she was a baby, when she first went to school. Those times will always be burned into my memory. She was so smart, she would memorize scriptures and such in no time. She was good with magic too, and would heal a broken finger in seconds. Her carefree face was full of smiles, and no one could get seriously mad at her even when she pulled her pranks. No one was better, or more full of love. Nargava clenched his fists. It's absurd. I'm not going to let her die for nothing. Is that why you bought that magic item and hid in the abandoned area? Coming across this magic item was no more than a happy coincidence. I never intended to keep on living for long, but I couldn't help but do what I had in mind. Think about it, the number of people that will be saved is much higher than the number of people that died for it. It's simple math. What do you mean you couldn't help it? Screamed Sem, I know you only see trash when you look around this city. Even kids are all just idiots to you, compared to your daughter, but who can forgive someone as cruel as you, who thinks he's God and goes around playing with their lives? Even Hale drew a line he couldn't cross when he was tricking women. You don't even have that. Don't lump me in with that small-time crook. Then. Let's end it here. If you feel no regret for your crimes, I don't have anything else to say either. Nick and the others got ready to continue the fight. Very well. It seems you people are definitely capable enough. I apologize for thinking you were lowly bounty hunters. Nargava took a heavy breath, let all the air out of his lungs, and repeated. It almost felt like his breathing was making the old building tremble. But. At this point, I cannot afford to hold back. There was a true sense of hostility coming from Nargava. Up until this point he had been on the defensive, but he was finally baring his fangs. Nick could count on one hand the number of opponents he faced that were as strong as this man, and the level of intensity reminded him of when he used to spar with his master, Argus. But the situation was different. Sparring with his master was done for the sake of preparing him to boldly face a real battle when it came. He was hit, kicked, knocked down, and defeated, but in a good way. This time, however, it was not a fight for the sake of preparing for what tomorrow might have brought. His opponent was more than just a kidnapper, he was closer to a legendary plague-spreading demon. This was it. Nick could not afford to lose. Let's go. All of survivors advanced, in response to Nick's voice. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 89, Showdown with Stepping Man, Part 4. Much like the first time they met, Nargava appeared before Nick in the blink of an eye, and the speed with which he approached Nick sent a shiver down his spine. With much more pressure in his fist than one would imagine, Nargava swung at Nick, who managed to block this time. Heavy. Serya. But his punches, kicks, and elbows were on another level in terms of skill and weight. Much like Nick, he was the type of human that could go toe-to-toe with a monster with his bare hands, but the weight of each individual attack surpassed Nick's. The intense pressure Nargava was putting on him was making Nick unconsciously retreat. You're wide open. Black blades. Guh. Nick sensed a spell was coming and jumped to the side. He used one of the big iron buckets as a shield, but it was slowly being chipped away. He could not fully protect himself, and a few fragments hit his arm. Rocks. They're really hard. What injured Nick's arm and was damaging the iron bucket were obsidian arrowheads. Nargava relentlessly fired them from his hands, as they destroyed the floor and equipment like a shotgun. Obsidian was sharp, and a sharpened obsidian knife would be sharper than even an iron sword. Its biggest drawback was that it was too easily broken, and thus it was not fit for everyday use as a weapon. However, this drawback was completely invalidated when it was used as a disposable item created using magic. Taya. That was when Karen appeared in front of Nargava, using her dragon bone sword as a shield. Behind her stood Sem, who boldly stepped forward to save Nick even as an unpleasant scraping sound echoed. Don't overdo it, Karen. I'm all right. The moment there was a break in Nargava's magic, Karen took a deep breath and exhaled flames. However, Nargava saw it coming and jumped back to avoid it. Sem took this opportunity to run towards Nick and cast healing magic. Let me help. Never mind that, Nargava. It's all right. Tiana. I know. There. From a beam close to the ceiling, Tiana cast Ice Spear, aiming for Nargava, who was still floating in the air. Moo. But Nargava's trajectory changed. He threw a hooked rope into a light fixed on a wall and used it to pull his body away. The ice spear passed through the empty space where Nargava was just a second before. He moves like a bug. Icicle Dance. Diamond Shield. Tiana and Nargava cast their spells at the same time, one to shoot ice pebbles, and the other to guard against them. What seemed like a stalemate was actually just a bluff. Nick realized what Nargava was planning and yelled. Tiana, get away. He has a shield, but I can at least keep him in check. That's not it. It's coming at you. The moment Tiana stopped casting her ice magic, the shield flew at her like a boomerang. She dodged just in time, but its force was such that it penetrated the wall and flew away. Was that spell always like that? He made us think it was just for defense and threw it with his raw power. What? Sem sounded shocked as he heard Nick's explanation. What do we do? Should we call Bond and Scott? No. They are our last resort in case he escapes. Bond was spread out in the southeast area of the Labyrinth City in case Nargava took a route they did not anticipate. However, it would take time for Bond and all his copies to reach the factory, and using parallel was also depleting his strength. Scott and Olivia were on standing by outside the factory, out of fear that their addition could throw off survivors' flow, and as a countermeasure in case Nargava escaped the factory. Also, Nargava could have friends that they did not know about. If the current situation broke down, they had the option of calling Bond and Scott for help. We'll deal with him here like we planned. Let's go. Got it. Karen raised her dragon bone sword in response to Nick's command. She leapt towards Nargava quicker than one would think with her heavy sword, and swung straight down. Since she did it just as he was about to land, it could not be dodged. Goo. Nargava once again activated his diamond shield to block Karen's attack. Karen kept pushing her sword down, with enough pressure to crack the ground she was standing on, until Nargava threw away his shield and quickly jumped back just as the sword was about to hit his neck. You're not getting away. Fire Dragon Fan. Karen spun around and swung her dragon bone sword sideways, releasing a flash of flames in the shape of a fan. It was an attack that focused more on covering a wide area than hitting hard. Sherya. Nargava parried it with his hand, by skillfully lowering and pushing up the back of his hand as the flash of flames approached. Wah! Didn't it burn? It's strong. But the trajectory is obvious. Don't think you've seen through everything. Nick approached Nargava while hiding behind Karen's flashy attack, and thrust his short sword towards Nargava's side. Not enough. Wah! Nargava created a small diamond shield, about the size of the palm of his hand, blocked Nick's attack, and pushed him back. Nick's short sword could not withstand the impact, and broke. It would be very difficult for something not as sharp as the dragon bone sword to successfully push back a diamond shield. Damn it. Nick tossed his short sword and attacked with his fist. His fists were lighter, but Nick figured it was possible to take him down if he could make more contact. Nargava's specialty was most likely a defensive fighting style that combined strengthening and defensive magic. The kind that allowed one to regroup quickly if they were ever suddenly attacked by bandits while traveling via horse or dragon carriages, or protect someone important even while unarmed. Nick understood this from Nargava's words and the impression he got while fighting him, and he fought back Nargava's heavy fists with his own. Guh. You're pretty good. Aren't you? What? Nargava stood firm after Nick hit him with his full strength. Nick felt a strange sensation in his fist. It was like he hit a boulder, or a human-shaped big tree that was deeply rooted in the earth. It was not Nargava's body. He had a medium build, and his appearance did not match the weight Nick felt. Jaya. Nick's hesitation was an invitation for a killing blow. He frantically crossed his arms to block Nargava's attack, but its force blew past it and sent Nick flying. Gua. Nick. Everyone was shocked to see Nick sent flying. Depending on where he was hit, he could very well be out of the fight. Ku. I'm going to heal him, cover me. Got it. Karen jumped forward again, but as fearsome as her big swings were, they were not fast enough for Nargava to be unable to deal with them. Unless they could create a situation where he would be wide open, such as when he was landing, he could easily dodge Karen's attacks even while defending against Tiana's magic. Stay still, and get hit. Angrily yelled Tiana while ice spears flew all over. Sem was about to heal Nick again, but felt something was off. Nick. It's alright, I didn't take that much damage. I've got it more or less figured out. Nick took a deep breath, stood up, and stepped forward. It seems like I'm in for another lesson. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 90, Showdown with Stepping Man, Part 5. Humph. Then let's see what you've learned from this short back and forth. Nargava calmly approached Nick again. Karen was about to jump forward, before Nick signaled with his eyes for her to step down. Nick. Leave it to me. And then, they traded fists once again. GUH. In just a brief second, a clear difference became visible. Nick was thrown back several meters, as his partners looked on, perplexed. Nick. Sem was about to run towards him, but just as Nick was about to hit the floor, he briskly turned his body and landed on his feet. I'm fine. Much to Sem's surprise, Nick casually slapped the dust off his knees. He did not seem to have received much damage. Did you really learn it in this short amount of time? Who knows? Maybe. Damn you. Nargava punched once again with overwhelming pressure, and Nick was sent flying like a children's toy. Jaya. Nargava then followed him to deliver another raging attack. His first step seemed to almost crack the floor, and in just a blink, he was once again in front of Nick. He dropped his heel with the same lack of hesitation as if he was crushing a berry, but Nick dodged it by rolling to the side. Nick used light body to skillfully and freely move around, but Nargava's attack soon followed. They were once again face to face, and once again, Nick was sent flying by Nargava's fists. Ops. And once again, Nick stuck the landing like a cat. This is making me dizzy. It's not something I can just use over and over again, is it? You learned vector control in the middle of our fight? Nargava was visibly shocked. Vector control. It's also called Keikei. It's a way to defend against attacks by controlling your weight in tune with the flow of your opponent's attacks. By using magic to weaken and lighten your muscles, and go with the flow, it's possible to receive attacks as if you were a feather or a dried leaf, and minimize damage. I'm still not perfect at it though. It's still the perfect way to defend against heavy body blows. That's what I figured. In contrast to Nargava, Nick seemed satisfied. It's not just light body, you're using heavy body when you step forward to attack. And contrary to what I'm doing, you use heavy body to defend against my attacks. I just realized something. Are you using heavy body when you move using wires too? Nargava had a stern expression on his face, but sighed quietly. Surprisingly, he answered Nick's question calmly. By switching between light body and heavy body, I can create an irregular trajectory, or chant them at the same time and shift my center of gravity. I use vector control and move with the flow, or use it to create my own flow. When I mastered these two things, the path to stepping was opened for me. Stepping. I've never heard of that. Did she decide you haven't reached the level to tell you yet, or that you should reach it by yourself? In any case, how did you notice? Nick responded to Nargava as if they were having a casual conversation. I've learned a lot of fighting techniques, and I can more or less tell someone's weight when fighting them. The feeling I was getting and what I was seeing didn't match, so I started thinking about why. I see. So. You told me you'd teach me, so how about another lesson? No, I've talked too much already. I consider it a gift for someone that is about to depart to the other world, but any more would be cruel. Also. It's not like you can oppose me just because you know what I do. Yeah, I don't think I can win just because I studied a little bit. If we didn't have to fight on equal terms, that is. Nick adjusted his breathing. A skilled sorcerer, more agile than a monkey, and a heavyweight fighter combined. But still a human. That's all there is to it. There's no problem. Nick started twisting his fingers and wrists to check the softness of his joints. It was his declaration that the real fight was about to start. Do it if you can. I've learned very well how scary you are. Now's my turn to teach you something. Nonsense. Try whatever you want, it's useless. Nargava bumped his fists, and so did Nick. They were too close for everyone else to come to Nick's aid, and Nargava made his move. Black blades. Nargava pulled his fist back to make it seem like he was going to throw a punch, but instead jumped back and cast offensive magic. He wanted to fire sharp obsidian rocks at Nick, who instead jumped in further than Nargava's retreat to close in on him. Nick turned Nargava's palm just as he was about to activate his spell, leading to the rocks being fired in a different direction. If I can read your eyes, hands, mouth, and magic energy, I can read your magic. You're not an adventurer or a brawler, and you received proper training as a knight. That kind of misdirection is too standard. Wah! Nargava was surprised, but attacked with the heel of his left palm. However, Nick's movements were even craftier. Not yet. Punch, kick, palm strike, magic. Every single one of Nargava's attacks was being dealt with. Nick was not receiving any of his punches or kicks head-on, instead dodging his heavy attacks at weird angles. Magic response is really useful. I can tell when you're about to use magic just by touching you. I'm really starting to realize how great it is in battle. Cool. Nargava used heavy body and attacked with all his might. I couldn't really get a grip before because you switched between heavy and light, but now that I know how it works, it's nothing special. The punch was so sharp it sent part of Nick's leather armor flying, but failed to even graze his skin. Nargava's stretched arm was also a good target for Nick. Got you. Moo. Nick's arm wrapped around Nargava's like a snake. Nargava tried to shake him off using heavy body, but Nick skillfully read his movements and wrapped himself even further. Shara. As he hugged Nargava's arm, Nick raised his lower body, and attacked Nargava's neck with his legs, like a scythe. Guh. Gah. Strangleholds and locking techniques don't work too well on monsters, but they sure help when fighting people. Goo. Nick was putting all of his body weight on this technique, but Nargava was not going down, and tried with all he had to tear Nick off him. The sound of heavy breathing and skin chafing echoed throughout the abandoned factory. White breath fluttered, and sweat dripped on the floor. It's over. Whispered Karen as she watched closely, and shortly after, Nargava's body collapsed. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 91, Sword of Military Arts. The night wind was hitting me. Even if the city looked different, the nice feeling of the wind and the sight of people going back and forth did not. I had often left this place, but my disorderly hometown fit me the best. No matter how much time passed, the character of the people living here stayed the same. Careless, crude, and a mixture of villains and virtuous people. Exactly the way I liked it. I liked going to remote villages, and uninhabited wastelands also had their charm, but being surrounded by people was the best. It was said that races that lived long lives eventually had their senses dulled. They would find dealing with people to be annoying, and would hole up deep in faraway mountain valleys, but that was nothing more than people with little intelligence thinking too hard. The older you got, the more sentimental you became, and you found more interesting things. There was a lot of harshness, but also a lot of happiness. 100 or 200 years was not enough for me to reach the point where I abandoned worldly thoughts and desires. However, while I did not by any means hate the vulgar atmosphere of the city, my ethics functions meant I could not help but repulse smoking and drinking, and the kind of places where people would have drinks poured for them. Having more chances to interact with humans compared to others of my kind meant my ethics function was stronger. Unless I was in a party or was specifically invited, I could not enjoy such things, although I found that regrettable. Going up to the roof of a closed tavern and enjoying the night view was not the same as having fun inside it. Oh, sensei. Hello, Ada. I heard the voice of one of my disciples. She had always been an energetic girl. She had been looking a little gloomy in recent times, but it seemed she liked this place, because she was looking a little more cheerful. Thank you for reading the room and keeping quiet. I was a little surprised because your face hasn't changed in 10 years. And you're using a fake name too. I changed my name and completely forgot to change my face. What a pain, what a pain. And you're wearing the same glasses. Shouldn't you buy new ones? Oh dear, you're right. Ada was next to me. You're going by Olivia now, right? And you're an editor for some bogus magazine? What do you mean bogus? I mean, who believes that sort of thing? Well, there are a lot of lies and gags, but most are real people and real events. You're not even a journalist or an editor in the first place, you're a trainer. You have disciples all over the place, don't you? I would not call myself a trainer. Something a little more refined. Ada snickered at her objection. She was so unreserved towards her master, although I did not hate it. I know. You're training people to defeat the evil god. That's a little too heavy for me. Foo, no problem. The stepping I devised and all martial arts were created to defeat the evil god. The goal is to defeat dangerous beings like that evil god and make a happy world. What? Basically, people should all search for their own happiness. That is what I think as a trainer. Is that stepping man your disciple too? Unfortunately, that is probably the case. Some decades before, I just happened to find a boy that had narrowly escaped death, feed him, and teach him some techniques. But before 6 months had even passed, he had learned some techniques and left me. Looking back, I think he was talented. Had he stayed with me longer, would he have not strayed from the correct path? It is all conjecture, and I am not fundamentally human to begin with, so would I have been able to become closer to him and put him on the right path? I am a soul-class spirit armament program to train those that would fight the evil god. My name is Sword of Military Arts, and I was born to support humans. I have no idea if that's true or if you're lying. Come on, don't doubt me. Why don't you do something about it yourself? All I could do is let out a strained smile. I sure wished I could. Didn't I tell you? My use of military force is restricted and can only be carried out in case of an emergency, such as when monsters are running wild or the evil god is resurrected. And it only becomes more difficult when the opponent is human. Ada sighed, seemingly understanding me. Yes. I remember. Any time someone drunk tried to start something with you, you would send them to me. It must suck being strong but unable to fight when the time comes. It's a mechanism put in place to prevent trouble. And you tried to stop him for me, didn't you? I just happened to run into him, and failed anyway. Ada shrugged. And you accepted a disciple as well. I only got to teach him for a day. I don't feel the least bit like someone's master. The important thing is not the number of days, it's the moment you see a young talent bloom. What do you think of him? He shows promise, but... It seems my big brother. Or sister. In any case, my sibling has him under their wing. I don't know how much I should meddle. Brother? You have brothers? I do have many family members. However, some have gone astray, and some are still sleeping. Phew. Are they like you? Ada smiled awkwardly. Well, beings like myself do not come around every day. Well, I will be leaving that stepping man too. That was when a shadow moved in front of one of the moons, quickly running and jumping from roof to roof. Ah. This might be bad. It only passed by for a second, but it released it. The ethics function locking my combat abilities had been disengaged. This meant it was an emergency situation. Something along the lines of a monster rampaging or the evil god resurrecting was taking place. Ah, Master, wait. I'm sorry. I have to go help. I took a deep breath, and exhaled. I, who mastered stepping, jumped towards the abandoned factory where the fight was taking place, but the mysterious shadow was fast enough to rival me. I hope they're all alright. Heavy breathing echoed inside the factory, coming from Nick and Nargava. Nargava fainted, but soon regained consciousness. However, he was completely spent, and could not move at all. Nick also sunk to the floor, exhausted. This fight took as much from the winner as it did from the loser. Why are you doing this? Sem approached Nargava. Didn't I tell you already? If what you say is true, you would have no reason to treat anything other than yellow devil disease or perform any divine service. I just did what I was wanted. There's no meaning to it. You're full of contradictions. You kidnap children and spread a disease. That's the devil's work. Then kill me or hand me over to the guild. And yet, you treat unrelated people in the abandoned area for free. I just felt like it. Then why were you so shoddy in terms of hiding what you were doing? Shoddy? The disposal of the corpses, how you carried on kidnapping children even after you noticed we were after you, stayed in the same office even after we went there, among other things. Nargava answered none of Sem's questions. Sorry, but there's something else we have to ask. Where did you get the Phantom King's orb? Asked Nick, but again, there was no answer, only silence. The air was tense, as they were all thinking Nargava might get up and attack again. However, Nargava paid no heed to them as he took a deep breath and raised his body, before sitting cross-legged. He had only recovered enough of his energy to do this. Well. Fine. I'll talk before he gets here. Nick repeated what Nargava said, and that was when it happened. Gwa. Something blasted through the door that was supposedly being held shut by things such as chairs and shelves, and a man slammed onto the ground. Scott. Weren't you supposed to be keeping an eye outside? Watch out. Someone dangerous is coming. It was Scott's body that blasted through the door. He was just barely holding on to his twin swords, and his body was covered in injuries. At the end of his stair, stood a strange-looking knight. It seems you are having a hard time, Mr. Priest. The man wore black armor with a white mask covering his face. The armor was made of an enchanting material, unlike metal or leather. It certainly did not seem like something a blacksmith had made. The mask was pure white, as if carved out of porcelain or a jewel. Everything about it, be it his equipment or the air around him, gave off the impression that he was not just some regular person. Hey. The color is different, but... said Tiana while stuttering. Nick felt the same way. He also remembered seeing something similar before. That really is. Thought armor. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 92, The Saint of the South vs. Stepping. It really is the thought armor. That means it's like Bond. It's an aura blade type magic sword. The color is kind of garish, but it's without a doubt a magic energy blade. Tiana confirmed what Nick said. Everyone was intimidated by the strange knight's appearance, or rather, his presence itself. What do you want, White Mask? Mumbled Nargava to the mysterious knight. Call it an after-service. Do you need help? I don't. Well, that will be a problem. You still haven't finished your job, have you, Mr. Priest? There are still plenty of criminals in that filthy dump that must die. If you don't harvest the wheat for me, what reason do I have to keep lending you that magic item? My objective is almost complete. I don't care whether or not people die, and I never made any definite promises either. The man Nargava called White Mask sighed, but it was unemotional, almost inorganic. Even his breathing felt more like exhaust from a duct or air vent. I would like to review the contents of our contract. But it would be impossible to have a quiet conversation here. And then, the knight's body flickered, and Karen and Tiana took action. Karen used fire breath and Tiana lightning, both aiming at the knight. But the knight was no longer there, and from the space that he occupied, magic came flying. Goo. Karen and Tiana's screams echoed behind Nick. Not bad reactions. Superb for timed lives. Nick turned around and saw Karen still holding her sword, laying on top of Tiana. In just a split second, Karen moved in front of Tiana to protect her. Your name is Survivors if I remember correctly. You're just as stubborn as your name implies. I see why it took a while for him to get the Dragon King orb. What? Nick couldn't move. One false step and he was done. Compared to the knight, the amalgam golem was nothing more than a baby. He was above Leon when he had the Sword of Evolution, and probably even outclassed Nick's master, Argus. Karen and Tiana survived thanks to Karen just barely managing to protect them with her dragon bone sword, but Nick would die if he received a direct hit. Nick had to find a way out. So. You're the leader, aren't you? When their eyes met, Nick had a strong feeling that he was about to die. He focused, and everything around him seemed to move slower. Sam. Go to Karen and Tiana. He screamed as he used light body as hard as he could. Become a feather, he thought. Become a running current. Become so soft and flexible that even being in the eye of a storm couldn't scratch you, he thought. He saw a flash, and before he knew it, the white-masked knight was in front of him, swinging his sword downward. However, Nick managed to slip below the blade. Nick moved with the assumption that this would happen. He could not follow him with his eyes and could not match this speed that far surpassed his, so all he could do was gamble. Coincidence and luck were on Nick's side for a second. He undid the light body spell. Heavy body. Grabbed the knight arm and cast the opposite spell. The building could be heard creaking as he stepped firmly on the floor, and used his entire body to throw the knight as hard as he could. Shah! There was a tub used for washing in the direction where Nick threw him, and a dull, heavy sound was heard as he crashed into it. For Nick, that was the best attack he could muster at that point. He raised his voice as he held back the shaking that came after he accomplished what he was trying to do. We're getting out of here. All of you. Humph, interesting. You can move like Nargava. But he was careless, and made the knight turn serious. He secured 5 seconds, maybe 10, and through the corner of his eye, saw Sem reach Karen and Tiana. If they focused solely on getting away, it should be alright. As a reward, I'll send you to the other world painlessly. His speed was peculiar. It was not like his approach or his swing were fast, all of his reactions were fast. Nick knew he could not hold the sheer level of concentration necessary to stand against him. Ho, did you give up? Nick decided to walk the fine line between life and death once again. However, he was not planning to dodge like before, he planned to counterattack with the assumption that he would be hit, or rather, die. He let his arms dangle, completely limp, and focused solely on the moment when the blade would move towards his neck. Would his attack succeed? He felt some regret about not being able to see the outcome. It's fine, thought a strangely calm Nick. That's the spirit. The black blade started giving off a strange shine, and Nick thought it was it for him. However. Charier. A strange war cry that resembled the cries of a strange bird echoed, and a woman's heel hit the back of the knight's head. Gua. What? You. It doesn't matter who I am, fix your stance. A mysterious woman with loose sleeves and a hood covering her head stood in front of the Black Knight, composed and completely unintimidated by him. Olivia. No, I didn't know you were that strong, Olivia. You saved me. Listen. Sam. Olivia is here to help. Didn't I say it doesn't matter who I am? Sorry. Was it supposed to be a secret? As they talked, the knight stood up. Who are you? We haven't met before, haven't we, Mr. White Mask? I've heard about you. White Mask. Now that I think about it. Nick felt he heard that name somewhere, and Olivia had the answer. White Mask. He's said to be a thief that only steals from high-ranking nobles and corrupt merchants. In reality, he doesn't care what he has to do or who he steals from to acquire magic items and perform questionable rituals as an agent of the worshippers of the evil god. Sometimes, when it's convenient for him, he'll give weapons and treatment to criminals and darkness dwellers, so they call him things like Dark Saint and Saint of the South. I don't see where this is going. In contrast to Nick's confusion, Nargava seemed to understand completely. Is that why you helped me? Because you knew more people would die? Are you the one that's been trying to steal corpses too? Do you plan to use them as sacrifices or something? It's better if you don't know. Are you developing a conscience now, after killing so many people? You make me laugh. White Mask snickered while swinging his sword. Goo. Heavy. Olivia blocked his attack and a metallic sound echoed. It seemed she had some sort of defensive equipment under her sleeve. I don't know who you are, but you're very fast. However, your physical strength is lacking. Obviously. I'm just a delicate girl. As Olivia said this, she suddenly became blurry. Wah! With speed surpassing White Mask's, Olivia delivered precise blows. The moment her opponent stepped forward she kicked his knee, when he dropped his head, she elbowed his chin, and when he tried to swipe with his sword, she hit him 3 times on his open flank. White Mask reflexively backstepped, and Olivia took a low posture, almost as though she was crawling, and once again closed in on him. White Mask attacked with his sword, but Olivia dodged as lightly as petals floating in the wind. After he missed a big swing, Olivia hit him 5 times in his median line. Duh. Damn you. The black thought armor cracked, and an ominous bright red light could be seen coming from the inside. However, the light slowly disappeared, as the crack repaired itself. As expected from a sacred garment of the ancient civilization. It looks like more than I can handle. Nick was mesmerized by what he was seeing. Olivia probably used stepping like himself and Nargava, but she did not seem to be using any other special techniques. Her movements all seemed to be a product of going beyond mastering the basics. Her movements flowed as though she was dancing, exactly what everyone that had an interest in hand-to-hand combat hoped to achieve. Wow. What do you mean wow? Come here and help me. It's too tough for me to do anything about it. Well, even if you say that. So, you think you can just stand there and chat? A strange aura emerged from White Mask's body as he screamed. This reddish-brown aura spread in a spherical shape, and cracked the floor beneath it. Dungeon create, red spot. Cough. This. The aura spread quickly, and covered Olivia's body. Her glasses cracked, and blood oozed out of her ears. Within this area, gravity, atmospheric pressure, temperature, and various burdens have been increased. This is an experimental barrier spell originally meant to control the environment for training purposes, but by shortening its range, it's strong enough to kill someone, as you can see. Olivia. This is really rough. Sorry, we shouldn't have wasted time talking. Idiot, stop talking. Damn it. Hey Nargava. You have a rope, don't you? Hold on Olivia, I'm pulling you out. No, it's alright. Olivia smiled boldly, with her face still covered in blood. I think I've bought enough time for him to get here. Right as Olivia finished speaking, a sword came flying right before Nick's eyes. It shot through the factory's entrance like a bullet, but stopped just before hitting Nick. Sorry. For being late. You really are late. I cannot return to my blade form unless I gather all of my bodies. It was not my fault. I know. Thanks. It was the Sword of Bonds. Nick grabbed it without hesitation. There's a ton I want to say and ask, but Sam. I know this wasn't part of the plan, but let's go. Got it. Sem, who was healing Karen and Tiana, stood up and ran towards Nick. And then, both yelled. Union. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 93, Survivors vs. the Saint of the South. You. Are you alright, Tiana? Tiana fainted, but Karen's voice finally brought her back. Her joints hurt, but she told her body it was not the time to worry about that. What happened? Olivia is strong, and bought us time. I have no idea what's going on. I don't really get it either. But look. Tiana looked where Karen was pointing, and saw light overflowing from the Sword of Bonds. When it settled down, a man with a clear face stood there. His hair was black and his body looked firm, but he was not holding the sword. The sword hovered around the man, emitting blades of pure light. Rather than having weapons, a strange white light radiated from the man's limbs. The white thought armor that covered the man's vital points looked a little different than regular armor. It was not made to protect his body, but rather to instantly start attacking without obstructing his arms and legs. It gave off an air of ferocity. Oh my, what a beautiful man. Union. That's an old lost spell. It can't. No one seemed more shocked than White Mask himself, who stayed still while remaining on guard. It seemed he felt threatened, something that had not happened until this point, and then, Nick/Sem took their first step. Is it time to start round 3? Their mystical-sounding voice cleanly resonated throughout the abandoned factory, and then, they snapped their fingers. All heal. The floating Sword of Bonds released a pure white light that illuminated the factory and enveloped their partners. Karen and Tiana's remaining wounds were healed, and the dull pain Tiana felt on her back and head vanished, also making her feel much better. This healing power was on an entirely different level than the healing Sem had been performing earlier. Wow. That's a very nice trick, healing people completely without even touching them. Is this sword the activator? Apparently. The healing power affected more than just survivors. HNN, what? GUH. Who asked you? Scott, who had passed out, and even Nargava were healed. Scott, who slowly woke up, looked around and asked, what happened? Who's that? Don't worry, just go back to sleep. Karen. Yes. Karen hit Scott with a chop to the neck, and he once again lost consciousness. Wait, Nick. No, Sem. Be careful not to be seen. Yes. Tiana and Karen hid the unconscious Scott behind an iron bucket. Both stepped back so as not to get in the way, and started cheering on this strange man, acting as though they did not know who he was. Sorry for the mess. Should we start anew? A sacred sword that can use union. Those weren't actually used in the previous war, were they? You don't need to know that. Do you intend on getting back at me? Then, I'll just have to make you answer. White Mask gathered energy in his left hand, before an even more ominous aura gushed out and the barrier widened. But Nick/Sem casually entered it. W8. You need to prepare if you're going inside. Nick/Sem remained indifferent to Tiana's warnings, and the moment their body was completely covered by the barrier, they chanted a spell. Regeneration. What? The Sword of Bonds started shining once again, and its light covered the ominous red barrier. I don't understand the principles behind it, but if a barrier keeps causing damage, I just need to counter it with my own. Regeneration was a barrier spell first established by several high-ranking priests working together and after careful preparation. Inside the barrier, people targeted by its effect will have their wounds healed. Or rather, it was almost as though they could not be harmed by attacks or killed. Bua. It's easing up. Can I fix my makeup? Olivia placed her cracked glasses in her chest as she wiped the blood from her face. But it took a lot out of her. The barrier stopped the previous healing from reaching her, and the effects of regeneration were limited. With the effects of the thought armor and the barrier, Nick/Sem thought they were finally evenly matched and carefully looked at White Mask. Olivia, you should rest. And even if I can heal wounds, the increased gravity still remains. At least until he's defeated. Said Nick/Sem, before moving right in front White Mask. The ground cracked where they stepped, and the hand with the white shine struck White Mask in the abdomen. Guo! White Mask stumbled. His armor was dented, and his breathing was pained. He went down to one knee. You finally took some real damage. There's a mountain of things I want to ask you. Can you talk? Nick/Sem said, as they watched at their finger move. However, a scream so filled with hate, it seemed to come from the depths of hell, echoed. I'm not done yet. As he screamed, the dent in his armor fixed itself. And I really put a lot of power into that hit. A sacred garment won't be broken so easily. White Mask swung his sword with all of his strength, as if getting back for the previous hit. Heavy. Nick/Sem crossed their arms and blocked the sword with their gauntlet. The sword weight was even greater than its sharpness, meaning Nick/Sem could not stop it completely and were pushed back, with the hard floor cracking as they tried to hold. The original weapon. The original weapon was most likely a sword even bigger than the dragon bone sword. It could even have been originally a hammer. It has been compressed and shaped to such a level while maintaining its weight. What are you trying to say, Bond? It is heavier than it looks. Imagine you are fighting a really huge hammer. Got it. The exchange of blows between White Mask and Nick/Sem continued for a while, with each hit resounding throughout the entire construction site. This roaring sound that would reach even the pit of one's stomach had its origins in surprisingly precise movements. There were no wasted movements in the way White Mask swung his sword, and behind them a stoic calmness could be felt. Nick/Sem, who were dealing with his attacks while attacking with their fists, could only describe it as mysterious. If you keep getting hit inside my barrier, even the effects of regeneration won't be able to keep up. It's a matter of simple addition and subtraction. White Mask confidently whispered. He was right, and Nick/Sem's healing was starting to fall behind, leading to them being wounded. White Mask on the other hand had his armor, which automatically recovered. Catch this. The huge impact from White Mask's refined swing hit the very core of Nick/Sem's body. Without regeneration, they would have been cleanly sent flying. White Mask was not completely unscathed, but his durability and stamina were far superior. I'm impressed. If you were put on a stage, people would call you peerless regardless of whether you're a hero or a villain. I have no interest in prestige in this fleeting world. I see. You're more stoic than I thought. Enough blabbering. You're right, it's time to get serious. What? The moment White Mask started mumbling his question, Nick/Sem started floating. It was only a jump, but it was very loose and slow. You think you can catch me off guard with? What? Contrary to what was expected, Nick/Sem did not continue rising, and instead the angle of their movements bent acutely and with incredible speed, drawing an unnatural orbit which allowed them to knee White Mask's flank. Gaha. In the end, stepping only allows for movements that are physically possible. Even if it allows the user to jump high and draw parabola curves, this kind of trick isn't easy. What did you do? Nick/Sem responded only with an amused smile. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 94, The Burning Abandoned Factory. Let's speed up. Try to dodge. From that point on, Nick/Sem played with White Mask, drawing a path like light reflecting off a mirror. Their movements were absurd, in contrast to Olivia's precise technique. Damn you. White Mask missed a sword swing, and rather than punching him in his wide-open chest, Nick/Sem sped up, went around him by moving diagonally upwards, and attacked his back. These phantasmagorical attacks continued, and now it was White Mask who was covered in wounds. It looks like that's all you have, so how about we finish this? Don't make fun of me, boy. Enemy search. White Mask extended his hand in an unexpected direction, and chanted a spell. There. Guided fireball. About 10 fireballs were shot from the palm of his hand. They started gently floating, but suddenly flew upwards quickly and in different directions. Ah, this isn't good. Suddenly, small explosions occurred when the fireballs seemingly hit something invisible. I knew it. You created something similar to thought armor and spread it around. You've been using it as a foothold to make it seem like you were floating. Good job figuring it out. And to add to that, I've made it so there's recoil when I step on them. It's a simple trick really. And what controls it? It's that sword. White Mask glared at the sword of bonds as it hovered in the air, raised his sword, and jumped. Damn it. Just kidding. Nick/Sem smiled. Humph, we knew you were going to target me sooner or later. Said Bond before he started spinning in place, so fast it became hard to see, looking like a disk of light. The sound of the sword of bonds cutting through the air echoed throughout the factory. Shah! That was when White Mask fearlessly slashed. When the two swords clashed, a light so bright and hot that it almost seemed as though it could burn the eyes of the people watching was released. The speed was so high and the impact so strong, it was no different than a bomb exploding. Don't forget about me. Nick/Sem did not miss the way White Mask's posture crumbled as he was pushed back by the impact of the swords clashing, and attacked his limbs and elbows with the same force as a cannonball. The moment White Mask's attention was turned to Nick/Sem to try to evade their attacks, the sword of bonds drew a parabola and attacked him. Nick/Sem's range of attack was 360 degrees, and no matter how strong White Mask was, he could not hope to handle this. Nick/Sem's heel hit the crown of White Mask's head. White Mask cracked the factory floor as he crashed onto it, and remained sprawled on the floor. Is it over? A brief silence fell over the abandoned factory, as Nick/Sem were torn between hopes of victory and the feeling that it could not possibly be over already. And then, White Mask's laugh echoed, confirming that the latter feelings were correct. Kukuku. I'll have to give it to you, it's been quite a while since I've been in such a pinch. White Mask said as he slowly got up. Red light started leaking from the gaps in his black armor, and then, like a balloon being inflated, he started swelling up. Bond, what's that? If that truly is a sacred garment, I believe he activated the emergency evacuation mode. His speed will double, but that is not all. His cerebral nerves will be accelerated, and you can expect his skill with the sword to also double. Hey. You sound way too nonchalant about that. Ready yourself. I'm holding nothing back now. From that point forward, it was a total stalemate. With the sounds of a thunderclap, a bright light painted the abandoned factory. The walls and floor were all cracked, and it looked as though the building could collapse at any moment. The battlefield remained contained inside the magic barriers, but it felt as though if even just the shockwaves of their attacks slipped through it, it would blow away surrounding buildings and people. This dangerous deadlock was about to end. Fufu. What do you think? You should be proud of having kept up with me this long. Nick/Sem were starting to get pushed back. Their thought armor was popping off due to the pressure, the light coming from the sword of bonds was becoming dimmer, and they were starting to feel their magic energy being depleted. Most people wouldn't endure my attacks for so long. You're pretty good. Humph. I don't need some kid's compliments, but I will remember you. As will I. Well then, White Mask. You were defeated because you focused too much on trying to outlast me. Ah. What are you? White Mask stopped, and suddenly there was an unnatural swelling in his chest armor. Gaha. Wah. You. Not bad for an impromptu combination, if I may say so myself. The pressure coming from White Mask's back spread throughout his body, and exploded through his chest. The source of this pressure was a blow that Olivia delivered with all her strength. She pretended to retreat, but instead recovered, refined her magic energy, and waited for the perfect opportunity to deliver one final blow. I know the smart move is to stand by and watch until the fist fight is over. You're covered in a magic item, locked your enemy in a magic barrier, and made absolutely sure the conditions would be overwhelmingly favorable to you, so you really can't say it's not fair. Nick/Sem had the same mean smile that could sometimes be seen on Sem's face. You sophist. Here I go. Nick, Sem. Whatever. Olivia landed several blows on vital areas and, as if to make sure he really would go down, Nick/Sem punched a stumbling White Mask in the jaw. The mask shattered, and its pieces made a quiet sound as they landed on the floor. Nick. Sem. The reddish-brown area. The barrier created by White Mask vanished. Tiana and Karen ran towards Nick/Sem, just as Union was undone, and their bodies collapsed on the ground. Both had their stamina and magic energy completely depleted, and were gasping for air. I am so tired. I thought I was gonna die. This time I really was ready for death as well. You overdid it, said Karen as she extended her hand towards Nick, who struggled to get up. Sorry. But it's not over yet. Nick looked at the man that was completely immobile and appeared dead. Beneath the White Mask was a bearded man with black hair. His very masculine features were dirted by blood, and he seemed to be on death's door. I thought he was a monster or something, but he's actually just a regular human. Wait, no. He's dying, isn't he? Let's remove his equipment and magic items and heal him. Gag him too so he can't chant any spells. Sem was about to move, when something happened. With incredible speed, something flew while making a high-pitched noise. Gufu. Nargava. Something pierced the area around Nargava's heart, leaving a very small hole. Without anyone realizing, a strange iron pipe stretched from White Mask's sleeve, seemingly tempered iron with no gloss. It did not even have a jewel like a sorcerer's staff. I can't believe I had to rely on such a cheap trick, but this is my contract. White Mask's voice sounded not like someone who had completed their duty, but instead was overflowing with disappointment. He's alive. Everyone, shields up. Sem is out of gas. Damn it. Got it. Here. Ice shield. After being startled by this strange attack, Nick mustered his strength to give directions. Karen jumped in front while holding her sword as a shield, Tiana cast an area defensive shield, and Sem approached them to use healing magic, only to discover he had no magic energy left in him. Everyone was impatient as they saw the situation turn sour once again, but White Mask did not follow up with another attack. Instead, a strange, androgynous voice came out of his mouth. Heroic Soul Soman Kataoka S abrasion confirmed. Initiating disposal. At the same time, the face of the man that looked as though he could die at any moment started simmering, and disappeared behind smoke. When the smoke was cleared, all that was left was a skull. Everyone watching was in a state of complete confusion, but in the middle of this confusion, White Mask stood up. What is this guy? Is he dead? Is he actually a monster? Who knows? I'm not sure myself. In any case, it seems my turn as White Mask is over. Goodbye, strong adventurers. A voice filled with anguish spouted from the skull's mouth, but its movements were very unnatural in contrast to the emotion that was felt in its words. It could even be said it was like an insect. The fluent movements that could be seen from top to bottom during the fight were nowhere to be found now. Self-destruction will now be activated to enforce secrecy. White Mask opened the chest portion of his armor, and a white jewel could be seen inside. He turned it with his finger, and it was lit with an ominous crimson color. Self-destruction. Is that? What do you think it means? This amount of magic energy can very well blow up the entire building. Said a panicked Bond. Seriously. This way. Tiana pointed to the collapsed iron pots, and everyone rushed towards them. Nick and Sem carried the fallen Nargava where Tiana pointed. Stop. It. I'm already dead. Shut up. If you die here we don't get our reward. You can die in a cell after we get paid. Shouted Nick before jumping behind the pots. Seconds later, a tremendous roaring sound was heard. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 95, after the fight. The explosion could be heard far, far away. Hey, what was that? Are there monsters running around or did a war break out or something? It came from that factory. You know, that one whose owner ran away in the middle of the night. I'm sure he came back and is fighting with his wife. You idiot. Does this look like something that minor to you? Maybe a sorcerer was doing experiments. On the streets illuminated only by the faint light from the stars, more lights started appearing, as the residents of the surrounding area went out to see what happened. This is terrible. It's been almost completely destroyed. What the residents saw was the abandoned factory in tatters. Walls had crumbled down, the ceiling was full of holes, and there were even small holes in the surrounding buildings, created by pieces of the factory that were blown away. Fortunately, no one was hurt, as the surrounding buildings were storehouses and factories, and were almost always empty at night. Many people from other residential districts heard the noise and left their homes to see what happened as well. Hey! There's still fire. We need water and dirt. Just get someone that can use magic. Call a priest. There might be people hurt in there. The manager of this place ran away. Who's going to pay? The guild, I guess. That doesn't matter right now. Just bring them here. The people that gathered were relieved to see damage to the surrounding buildings was minimal, but were frightened by the scope of the destruction. The building seemed as though it could collapse at any moment. The creaking noises coming from the factory made it seem as though a gust of wind could bring the whole thing down, but then, one man willingly went inside. President. It's too dangerous. I have to, I'm in charge of the fire department this year. Damn it, I shouldn't have joined the Merchants Guild. I shouldn't have trusted them when they told me to take the post just for the title. He was a stout middle-aged man, wearing nothing but his sleepwear and sandals. He was, however, wearing a helmet for some reason. It seemed he grabbed what he could before running to the scene. Apparently, he was a man of considerable social status, and his subordinates desperately tried to stop him. Let's wait for the pros or the order. We can't count on them. I have to check to see if someone's here. Hey! Is anyone there? And then, as if in response, a thud was heard. Upon further inspection, there was a group that took cover behind iron pots. Yes. Yes. One of us is very badly hurt. Help us. All seemed like young adventurers, and all were wounded. Even as he felt like trouble was brewing, the man raised his voice. Get out of there. It's dangerous. Hey! Are the priest and sorcerer here yet? We have injured people here. People behind the man started moving quickly. Wind magic was used to calm the wind around the factory, and earth magic was used to create embankments. Guh. The young adventurer who raised his voice, Nick, let out a sigh of relief. Looking at the people rushing to help them cut the thread of tension. Wait, we're coming. As Nick heard this hurried voice, his consciousness flew far away once again. Are you awake? Where am I? Manhunt's medical office. When adventurers come back from work with wounds that aren't very serious, they are taken here. How are you? Any dizziness? The dear woman receptionist blankly looked at Nick's face as she answered his question, before going back to writing in a document. Nick felt strangely impressed at how, despite her vulgar attitude, she could act like a decent doctor. Well, more or less. Nick got up from the simple bed he had been laying on. The white light coming from the lighting magic item was colder than a lamp, and painted the room with a cold brilliance. Nick looked around and saw Sem and Bond sleeping. The completely different feeling from where he was before made Nick feel lethargic, and even perplexed. Where are Tiana and Karen? Those girls' wounds were worse, so they needed proper treatment. Don't worry, their lives aren't in danger or anything. Thanks. While giving a half-hearted, "You're welcome," the woman stopped writing and faced Nick. So, we're going to need an explanation. You were after Stepping Man, right? Nick's mind finally caught up with what happened upon hearing that name, and all the things he had to check and do suddenly rushed to his brain. Stepping Man. That's right. Hey, what happened to Nargava? And White Mask? Wait, calm down. Nargava is the name of that man, right? And I don't know anything about that White Mask. Nargava is Stepping Man, and he's the one that's been kidnapping kids. White Mask had been lending him a magic item and helping him, and he went there to silence him. He did manage to silence him. That man was dead when he arrived. Damn it. Nick punched the bed in frustration. Good grief, why are you so anxious? Is that White Mask or something coming to attack? No, he's dead too. There should be nothing left of him. I guess we'll have to examine that later. The abandoned factory is in ruins. What else? Nick didn't know what to say. His impatience grew stronger, and he did not know what to say first. I'm thinking. I think you should rest first, but I don't have time for that. What about you? Do you have anything to tell me? I dunno. Ah. The woman suddenly stopped, and remembered something. That Nargava guy was holding this. A note? Yes. Nick took the paper and looked at it closely. Strange lines were drawn on it. He could not even tell if it was some sort of code or letters, and beside them, a symbol that resembled an arrow was drawn. It looks like a map or something, but I've never seen terrain like that. I dunno what that arrow means either. The arrow. Ah, I know what this is, it's to undo a magic lock. That sort of thing exists. It's a kind of magic item. A lot of safes and storehouse doors use this sort of lock. But I don't understand the lines. What is this? I dunno. The woman shrugged, but Nick fought to keep his eyes open and kept thinking. It seemed familiar. Something told Nick this was important. I've seen this. Where did I see this? Calm down. You need to relax and collect your thoughts. I know. Calm. Calm. But Nick frowned and scratched his head, and the woman let out an exasperated sigh. It's not like you have to say it right now. I know. But I don't get this. Why did he leave this? There was something he wanted to tell, I guess. But what is it? Something he couldn't tell. Maybe something he was hiding. Something he was hiding. What was Stepping Man hiding? His identity. But that was nothing more than a means to an end. His goal was to kidnap people, children to be exact. I got it. Did you figure it out? This is a map. I've never seen weird directions like these though. Yes. This is a map for stepping. It's for someone that can walk around the labyrinth city by walking on rooftops and fences. Nick finally remembered. This map looked like the stepping routes drawn by Olivia. The lines were scrawled, probably because he mustered the last of his strength to draw them before he died, but Nick quickly understood where the map led and what its purpose was. A vague sense of danger was beginning to form. If someone showed up to silence Nargava. Are the kidnapped kids in danger? We can't leave them like this. Did he mean to write that but couldn't? Wait. And that's not all. The office in the abandoned area and the people that frequent it are in danger too. We have to take care of that. Hey Sem. Wake up, it's not over yet. You two bond. Wait. We're racing against time. Help us too. The receptionist that usually yelled at vulgar adventurers was pushed by Nick's fervor, and understood the severity of the situation. Alright, I know it's bad. You're probably still in pain, so I'll carry you there while you lead the way. Alright. No, I can walk. We have no time to walk. Come on. Yelled the receptionist before lifting Nick off the ground. Wawa. What are you doing? I told you I'd carry you. Lead the way. I get that, but don't hold me in your arms like this. Why are you so strong anyway? You talk too much for a man. Dear people are strong if nothing else. Which way? Wait. This is a factory, then the fence around the church is probably here. The residential area northwest of the factory. Take me, and bond here, and send people to the abandoned area. It will be faster if you people take Sem there. Got it, let's go. The receptionist told another employee what Nick said, and took off running at an incredible speed. Slow down a little. Shut up if you don't want to bite your tongue. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 96, The Children's Decision, Part 1. Ronia. What? How many days have I been here? Mumbled Elise, who was laying on a bed, but I didn't have an answer for her. You were already here when I was kidnapped. You're the only one that would know. You came 3 days later, I think. Then. I've been here for 17 days, and you've been here for 20. And I guess it's been 15 for Elmer and Joseph. That's amazing, Ronia. This compliment annoyed more than it made me happy. It's not amazing. We can't stay here forever. Why? The food is nice, we don't need to take lessons, no one complains when we spend all day reading. This is nice. Elise. This girl was just too naive. She wasn't bad, but had no sense of danger whatsoever. The 4 of us have been kidnapped. The house we were in was kind of nice. It was probably somewhere in the east part of the labyrinth city. It was made of wood, had 3 floors, and looked like the sort of residence merchants would live in. It wasn't the sort of fancy place nobles lived in, but it was spacious and comfortable. But we weren't allowed to go outside. The windows were nailed shut with storm shutters, and the front door was locked with chains and some sort of spell. I assumed that probably wasn't all. I imagined there was probably something outside that alerted the old man right away if we did manage to go outside. But Old Man Narga isn't scary. You know. Just because someone doesn't show you a scary face, that doesn't mean they're not scary. People can pet a cow they're planning to turn into meat later. Are we going to be eaten? Who knows? It was reasonable to assume we'd be sold to questionable nobles, or worst-case scenario, unregistered sorcerers to be treated as lab rats. But there was no point in telling this to a sheltered girl that looked like she would believe babies came from storks. I didn't want to deal with her bawling when she could not accept reality. She told me she was about 12, but she felt like she was younger than 10. Anyway, we need to look for a chance to escape. But what? What if we end up like Martha? Martha, the first kid to get there, who wasn't there anymore. That was an accident. But Martha was about my age, and my friend from before we were kidnapped. She had a pretty face, and people said she would eventually marry some merchant who fell in love at first sight and become rich. But for some reason, she had the bad habit of stealing. She had parents, but her friends taught her how to pickpocket, and she would steal anything she could. Not just wallets and keys, she could even steal rings from people's fingers. If she lived an honest life she could have become a normal adult and live a happy life, but her talent was her worst enemy. She stole a small bottle from that old man's pocket. I'm sure what she was really looking for was a key to those chains, or some other way to escape. She opened the bottle, found bloody gauze inside it, and touched it. She immediately realized it was dirty, threw it away, and wiped her hands with a wet cloth. But she had the habit of biting her nails. That man's face turned white when he heard what happened. He took her somewhere when she started coughing. I could more or less guess what happened. The blood in that bottle came from a sick person, and it infected her. In any case, we don't even know what will happen if we stay here. But there's nothing we can do. We should just get used to it, and stay quiet so we don't end up like Martha," said Elise as she laid on the bed, reading a book the old man left here. He left picture books for children, and textbooks that taught magic. Elise loves reading them. Her parents were harsh. They would make sure to train her for homemaking, but wouldn't let her study much else. They planned to send her to a baron's house to learn proper manners while working as a maid after she completed elementary school, but she was obviously not happy about that. She wouldn't be staring at that magic textbook if she was. Enough. It was like Elise didn't fear that man at all. And the other two tried to come up with ways to escape at first, but gave up after they failed. They completely forgot about escaping, and were now completely immersed in the board game they were playing. I couldn't count on them. I'm hungry. Let's eat some bread or something. Yes. The other two, Elmer and Joseph, yawned on their way to the kitchen. Don't eat too much again. It's fine. There's not much else to do. That man doesn't mind anyway. What about you? Stop hiding food while pretending to eat. Geez. They were all so unconcerned. These two had parents that were worried about them and everything. If you want to stay here forever then be my guest. I want to get out, but you know we can't. That old man is dangerous, you really shouldn't cross him. Really? Joseph was surprised to hear what Elmer said. Elmer was about the same age as the rest of us, but he was smart. You wouldn't think he was the same age as Elise. Elmer and Joseph had been friendly since the day they met, and Elmer treated Joseph almost like a little brother. Joseph was far bigger than Elmer, so he looked like a sheepdog following his owner. Elmer didn't seem to mind, and looked after him. It would be adorable if not for the circumstances. It would be hard for them to see their families again if they stayed here forever, but to be honest, it was not like I didn't understand their apathy. Both feelings of wanting something and the sense that nothing could be done swirled inside my head. I felt like a dog chasing its own tail. Hey! Is someone there? There was suddenly a voice from outside. Everyone froze in place. We hadn't heard anyone except for Old Man Nargava in 3 weeks. Why yes. Wait. Don't just answer like that. Elmer covered my mouth, and Elise held me down. Joseph seemed like he didn't know what to do. We don't know for sure that they're here to help us. What Old Man Nargava is doing is very shady, so who knows if we're getting involved in an underworld dispute or something. When you kidnap someone, it's usually for a ransom or slavery. None of us are that poor, but we're not nobles either, so it has to be slavery. What does that have to do with whoever's out there? Whoever's there can't be good. I'm sure this place is well hidden. No one noticed us all this time, no matter how much noise we made. So what do we do? Just wait for them to leave. That's what we got to decide. What do you all think? After Elmer's whisper, we all realized this was a decisive moment. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 97, The Children's Decision, Part 2. We have to get help anyway. Staying here isn't going to end well. Right. I screamed, but the others looked downwards, not sure if they should agree. After a few moments of silence, Elmer responded. I don't know. I think we'll at least survive if we stay. How can you be so sure? If he wanted to kill us, he wouldn't be going through the trouble of looking after us. And he would have locked us in the worst place too. But what if he's selling us off to someone that's going to do something even worse than killing us? There's always that chance. Elmer shrugged, and started playing with those annoyingly thin bangs. We weren't getting anywhere, but that was to be expected, since neither of us knew for sure what we were talking about. I turned to the two that were quiet. Joseph still looked flustered, and Elise had a look of desperation on her face. No. I want to wait for old man Narga. Why? Because he promised. He said next time he's back, he would teach me magic. He never says anything. But he nodded. You have a family, don't you? Like a real family, not like that man. No. You don't get it, Ronia. I didn't respond to Elisa's screams right away, and it became quiet, but it suddenly crossed my mind that there was no way this mess couldn't be heard from outside. I was sure whoever was out there was going to break down the door and come in. I can't hear you from here, but I'm sure you can hear me. Apparently the old man was more careful than I thought. But whoever was outside seemed convinced we were in the house. The entrance should be chained shut. The emergency unlocking has to be done from that side. We could break the door along with the whole building using magic, but you'd get caught in the destruction. I'll teach you how to do it, so unlock it. Emergency unlocking. I hadn't heard of that before. The other three looked surprised too. We were all nervous as we listened to the person outside while staring at the door. There should be a very tiny jewel among the chains. I rushed towards the door and searched frantically. I found it behind the third chain to the right. Press it lightly with your finger. After 10 seconds, a green arrow should appear. I did as I was told, and the red jewel flashed green. It changed. Now move your finger as I say, starting from where the arrow is pointing. I was about to do as the person said, when I was pushed. Ouch! Elise. What are you doing? No. Let's wait until old man Narga gets here. Are you an idiot? The jewel stopped shining. Did I fail? Did I make a mistake? Do it right after it changes color. If you press it too many times or make a mistake in the sequence, it goes back to red. If you fail 3 times, the anti-tampering function kicks in and it won't be able to be unlocked. Be careful. 2 things crossed my mind. We could still be saved, but we only had 2 more attempts. I got up and glared at Elise, but all she did was glare back. No. I didn't even say anything. We should wait for old man Narga. Elise, he's a bad man. I know. But he pats my head and gives me books. Of course she knows, but she still wanted to cling to the hope of Narga taking her away, giving her another life. Elise, it's not like Ronia is telling you to hate that man or betray him or anything. Elmer stepped in. I got angry and was about to tell him not to get in the way, but hoped he would convince her. No. Do you think he's the type of person that will get mad if we open the door? No, but he might give up. I don't want that. Oh. Elmer looked at me as if asking what to do. He wasn't any help now that it mattered. Think. What kind of situation is this anyway? Who could be behind this door, trying to open it? Who could know how to open it? Now that I think about it. How come this person knows how to undo the lock? The expressions on their faces changed after they heard what I mumbled. This lock is probably the type you have to set yourself. If this person knows how to undo it, that could mean one of 2 things. This person is his friend, or an enemy that forced the information out of him. Elise reached the same conclusion, and looked like she was about to start crying. Elise. Eek. Let's go outside. We won't know what happened until we open this door. Maybe something happened to the old man. But we don't know if something good is waiting for us outside, but we can't stay here. You know that. But Elise wasn't moving. She hugged the chains so as not to let anyone touch them. I worried about us wasting time, and wondered what could be done about Elise. We just have to protect Elise. Together. Surprisingly, it was Joseph, who was panicking the most, who said this. You're scared, right? You were the first one to get here, and the next one died. And you spent some time alone with that old man. I'm sure you had to think of him as a friend, right? You. It doesn't matter if you like him or not, what matters is that he's doing something dangerous. He's not going to hate you or anything just because you leave. We're leaving because of the person that's on the other side of the door. It's not your fault. You. Elise started crying. She pressed her face with her hands, but the tears wouldn't stop coming. She was afraid this whole time but had been holding back. She wanted to think she was being loved and protected. It was the same for me, and Joseph and Elmer too. Getting mad and playing around were just distractions. How did you know about Elise? Joseph seemed surprised by my question. No, I mean, what's strange is that you didn't know. If anything, you two are the ones that are too calm. It's kind of scary. Elmer and I looked at each other, not expecting to hear this, and laughed. What are you talking about, Joseph? You're pretty great. After laughing for a while, we sorted out our feelings. Elise, if you feel that it's dangerous, run away. Get help from the old man, the knights, the adventurer guild, or whatever. Just do what you can. Elmer or I will start screaming, and then we'll all run at once. Use whatever you can get your hands on, got it? If someone gets caught, we'll hold no grudges. We shouldn't have to worry about that. Don't count on being lucky at a time like this. I said while staring at Elmer, but he just giggled. Still, that made him very reliable depending on how you looked at it. All right. I'll do it too, said a nervous Elise. Are you sure? Yes. If it gets dangerous, I'll run. You'll run too, right? Of course. I nodded, as Elmer went to the kitchen to get knives, forks, and put seasonings in his pockets. Shrewd guy. I'd definitely hate him if I met him in school. We sort of have a strategy now. Let's go, said Elmer, and we all nodded. What's going on? I have no idea. The door was suddenly opened, and children suddenly started running in all directions, but Bond, his copies, and the dear person receptionist caught them in no time. Are you really an adventurer? Said a girl with a mean look in her eyes as she glared at Nick. What else could I be? Well, you look kind of shady. And that lady looks scary too. What do you mean shady? Nick peeked at the dear woman, who was holding the two boys by their collars. They were children, but it was still impressive that she was effortlessly holding them up. What? It's nothing. It's just. Aren't you kind of strong? I wouldn't be working there if I wasn't strong enough to hit you idiot adventurers, said the dear woman while sighing. Anyway, you're coming with us to the guild, and then we're going to contact your parents. All right? One of the girls Bond caught looked up with a keen look in her eyes. What? What happened to Old Man Narga? Nick wasn't sure what to say. They seemed to be doing well considering they were confined, but they also tried to run away, meaning Nick was not sure if they were emotionally stable. He did however feel that lying or being intentionally vague was not the right move. He's dead. Did you kill him? I went after him because he was a kidnapper, but someone else killed him. The eyes of the quieter girl started watering. She pressed her mouth with her hands, and started quietly sobbing. The other children seemed despondent, but still consoled her. Elise. Yes. Ronia. It's over. We should go home. This signaled the end of the case. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 98, Case Details. After the incident in the abandoned factory and the rescue of the children, things were still busy. It was a crazy case that invited a lot of suspicion and doubts. There was even the possibility that Nick and the others could be treated as people who murdered a volunteer doctor. There was no evidence of White Mask having killed Nargava, or that White Mask self-destructed, other than testimony from Olivia and Scott. Plus, the simple fact that they were bringing up a being that was only talked about in magazines about the occult, raised suspicion. Having that said, the moment they returned to Sea Anemone, Red gave them a lot of advice with extreme intensity. And then, Nick and the others went around collecting evidence as quickly as they could. They went to the Adventurer Guild manhunt to explain what happened in detail, searched through Nargava's office in the abandoned area and the house where he kept the children, collected evidence, put everything in order, went to the guild once again, examined the place where the battle with Nargava took place. And before they knew it, a week had gone by. I am so sleepy. Don't fall asleep. The moment Nick's eyelids closed, the dear woman receptionist yelled and smacked the table. They were in Manhunt's conference room. The atmosphere inside the guild was rough, enough to be confused with a tavern, but the receptionist's conference room in the back was the complete opposite. There was tension in the air. It was a different kind of silence than the guild's infirmary. It was neat and organized, and the employees' eyes felt sharp. Please. I need a break. I'm at my limit too. Said Nick with bags under his eyes, and Sem with a low-energy mumble, but the receptionist only glared. You're the leader, aren't you? And you're the one that spent the most time with Nargava, aren't you a priest? I have to deliver documents to the Order of the Sun tomorrow, so you're going to be here all night preparing them. You might not even get your reward if this isn't done right. To receive a reward for a high-paying bounty, it was always necessary to receive permission from the Order of the Sun. After explaining what happened, they would have to examine if their actions were reasonable for bounty hunters. Since they destroyed an entire building, this examination would be particularly harsh. We've been so busy this whole week. I'm starting to get jealous of the others. Said Nick with a sigh. The remaining 3 members managed to avoid being called due to their injuries. In reality, Tiana and Karen hadn't fully recovered, and it could lead into trouble if the Order looked into Bond too much, so Nick and Sem ended up being the scapegoats. It could have been a lot worse if that Nargava didn't keep good records and a journal. It doesn't usually go this smoothly. Nargava left a lot of things behind, almost as if he knew he would die. Everything from how he was expelled from the capital, how he arrived in the Labyrinth City, and everything he acquired and did. Because of this they knew who Nargava kidnapped as Stepping Man and how they were doing. It shed no light on who White Mask was, but it was still enough to get a good grasp on the case. Most of it matched what Tiana and Sem theorized. Still. You people go to the abandoned area a lot. Don't those people there have a problem with that? The inhabitants have a rule not to mess with bounty hunters. Surely not everyone follows that rule. That's true. He didn't just leave documents, he even left a will. This is the whole reason everything's going so smoothly. Sem answered instead of Nick. Nargava left more than just documents. Everything that he left written was left with a patient that seemed trustworthy, just in case he didn't make it back one day. He also tasked someone he could trust with freeing the kidnapped children, but Nick figured out where they were first, saving some time. How are the kids doing? We couldn't keep them here for a week, and it doesn't look like that White Mask guy was working with other people, so we returned them to their parents. Don't make me have to deal with kids ever again. Looks like Nargava took good care of them. The kidnapped children all seemed well when they were found. Nargava did lock the children in that house, but as far as Sem could tell, he did not infect them with anything. He gave them food, a place to sleep, left things there for them to pass the time, and there were no signs that he ever hit them. It seemed they trusted him to some degree. The child that died of yellow devil disease, but... The receptionist was strangely hesitant. She had the habit of stealing, and was good at pickpocketing. She stole a bottle from Nargava's pocket when she was looking for a way to escape, but it turned out to be blood from a patient. She carelessly broke the bottle, and became infected. Nick and Sem were both surprised to hear this. So Nargava didn't infect her. He was strongly hinting that he did though. Well, I don't know if we can fully trust what the kids say. Nargava did write about planning to use kids for experiments, but it never left the planning stage. So most of the kids were healthy, and the one death was an accident, said Nick as he tried to put his thoughts in order. And then, Sem told them his conjecture. Could it be that he was going to do it but got cold feet? Maybe. Or maybe there were other problems with his plan. For someone that kept such good records, his actions don't make that much sense. It's contradictory. All Sem could do was sigh. Both Nick and Sem felt Nargava was full of contradictions. He seemed emotionless, but they could feel he had a kind side. He looked cruel, but could be compassionate. We don't expect bounties that give us trouble to be logical. A lot of people lie, pretend they've learned their lesson, and get thrown in a cell here time and time again. But the doctor, Nargava, is something else. It makes my head spin. I agree. Stop wasting time agreeing, we have to get the documents ready to show to the big shots in the Order of the Sun. If they're not happy with it, they'll come here and ask all sorts of questions, and worst case scenario, they'll start arguing with our higher ups. Ah, what a pain, what a pain. Anyway, write something convincing or they'll complain. You say that, but we have the man's diary and notes, so they have no choice but to believe it, right? The receptionist had a self-deprecating smile on her face as she heard Nick. Maybe that's true for other people in the nights, but I don't believe what people say. Their words are always full of lies, both written and spoken. She said while running her pen. Both the guild and the order write down their promises but then say, the situation's changed, or, the laws changed, all the time. It's all just scrap paper. It's even worse with bounties. Those people lie as easily as they breathe. That's why I believe in actions and not words, because that's the only thing you can really trust. So. You went after Stepping Man, tracked down Nargava, and saved the 4 kids. That's the result. Stop worrying about a liar's words and really emphasize what you've done. That's your best argument. Despite her tone, the content of her speech was actually praising them. Why are you angrily saying something like that? Asked a confused Nick. There's too much unorganized information, we can't put it all in writing. What did he do, and what happened? If we don't focus on the facts and stick to the main point, we're never going to be done with this. So you're telling us to stop chatting. Alright, I get it. Nick wanted to say she was the one that got off track, but held it back. Also. About what Nargava's thinking and what he was going to do. Even if he was alive, he wouldn't tell us the truth. You're bounty hunters, so stop getting all caught up in what happened and what he was doing. If you want to worry about stuff like that, go back to being a priest. What she said struck a chord with Sem. You're cut out to be a priest too, don't you think? I'll pass. There's a lot of work and a lot of trouble around here, but it's still better than being a priest. I agree, being an adventurer and bounty hunter is better. You can relax and drink alcohol too. Yes. The trick to lasting long as a bounty hunter is to take it easy. But I can't relax too much. I'm doing some of the work he left behind. Work? The receptionist looked at Sem with suspicion, but he shook his head like it was nothing. I'm talking about his work as a doctor in the abandoned area. Since he's gone, I thought I'd take just the patients that didn't finish their treatment. In return, people there promised to testify. You could just leave it, I don't think that's going to bring you a whole lot of money. And I don't think being a bit nice is going to do you any good either. Said the receptionist with a surprised expression, but Sem responded with a light smile. It's all right. I have something in mind. Humph. Well, do whatever you want. Anyway, I'm going to need to prepare this document. Hey you. She suddenly screamed at Nick, who nodded off while they were talking. If we can just finish this, you'll be on your way to receiving your reward. Hold on a little longer. Oh okay. The sun was starting to illuminate the sky by the time Nick and Sem were allowed to leave the guild. The sun was rising when they left the guild. All over the place, people were preparing breakfast, and the smell of bread being baked reached Nick's nostrils and made his stomach growl. I'm tired and hungry. Well, we've finally made it out. Good job. Said Sem with a kind smile. Nick secretly admired Sem for being able to smile like that when they were so exhausted. Nick. What? I'm glad I came here. Well yes. If we didn't, we might not even get our reward, and they would have probably start coming up with weird theories. I'm glad I didn't come here alone, having someone else here really helps. That's not what I mean. No. Sem giggled. Nick was too tired and sleep-deprived to understand. When I said that being an adventurer is easier than being a priest, I was half lying. In a way, we have less responsibility, and more ways to have fun when we want to relax, but when we look around us from where we're standing, we can see all sorts of different things. There are people we can help, which I think is admirable, but it's hard at the same time. There's a lot of human filth we have to see but would be better off not seeing. That goes double for bounty hunters. My old leader didn't want to get involved in bounty hunting for that exact reason. I know how he feels. But I'm glad I got to learn. In fact, if I just lived in the temple as a clean and pure priest, what would happen? I'd just end up being a nasty hot guy. Nick's face was serious for a moment, before he started laughing. Bua. What, you're calling yourself hot now? I am. If I don't remove this mask now, I'm going to have to carry it forever. Sounds like I have a partner I can count on, but is also going to drag along some trouble. Please help me when that happens. Getting carried away, aren't we? But in return, I'll help you in any way I can. They laughed as they headed toward Sea Anemone, where the rest of their partners waited. The morning sun painted the sky blue. It was starting to feel like summer.